This crowd rises to its feet. Vaccaro slammed it home. Garland left wing, free ball. Perfect! Garland right of the lane, lobbed to Mobley. Pow! And Allen blocked the shot at the rim. Pow! With the left hand and a foul.
Welcome to the Chase Down Podcast, part of the Cavs Media family. I'm your host, Justin Rowan. The Chase Down is presented by Fubo TV. Watch over 100 channels of live sports and TV for half the cost of cable. There's no contract and no commitment. Try for free at FuboTV.com. The NBA playoffs are coming up so fast. It is so much fun to watch the play-in and not be part of it. That is a big-time improvement from this time last year, looking at the anxiety, the weird things that can happen in one game. But we got a much more exciting matchup to talk about, the matchup of the first round of the NBA playoffs. And joining me today to discuss it is my co-host, Carter Rodriguez. Carter, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing quite well, Justin. I'm feeling the fever. I've been just playing Pitbull's Timber playoff remix over and over and over again to get ready. It's time, baby. It is time. I'm feeling great.
You have to play it. It just goes in a loop in my head. And joining us today, I am very excited for our guest today, Carter, because obviously we can't do a Knicks Cavs preview without a little bit of help. We need to bring in the big guns, and we are bringing them in from Knicks Film School. Joining us today is both Andrew Claudio and Jonathan Macri. Boys, how you doing? How you feeling? Welcome back, Andrew.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for welcoming the face and the voice and the dean of Knicks Film School as well. It's going down. We're yelling timber over here in New York.
Team by team, round by round, into the night. It's going down.
Classic. Yes.
John, I actually spent today listening to the last two episodes of Knicks Film School. You guys did a great job, or you did a great job, I should say. Fred Katz was a lot of fun, and I enjoyed the one with Benji as well. I would recommend all Cavs fans listening to this to go back and listen, because I thought, great level-headed discussion about what this series can be, some of the kind of points of emphasis, ranking players I enjoyed as well, even though not enough love for my guy, Karis LeVert. I was a little upset at that, but I thought overall just a terrific job. And you guys do a terrific job in general at Knicks Film School, which is why we had to have you on for this occasion.
Thank you. I thought this was just going to be all reflecting back on the mid-90s, talking some Mark Price, Tyrone Hill, Hot Rod Williams. There were those were some battles, right? Back in the day. I know I remember those. Andrew may be a little bit too young.
Yes.
Well, I mean, speaking of reflecting back, when Andrew DM'd the group DM that we have of the four of us, the last message was me floating an Andre Drummond for Frankie Smokes trade. Look how far we've come. Look at us. Who'd have thought?
Quite literally started from the bottom. Now we're here. Yeah, indeed.
That trade deadline was a lot of fun, but this is a much, much better place to start off. But before we start off with the actual fun stuff, we'll just give a brief update on Julius Randle. I saw today Tibbs said that he practiced once again, but no contact. It did seem though, and Jonathan, maybe you can speak to this. When Fred was talking, just Randle's ability to play through pain and his willingness to tough things out. Do you expect Julius Randle to play game one? Because I'm at the mindset of, especially with a little bit of a break between Saturday and Tuesday, I kind of expect Randle very early in the series, but game one seems to be the one that's up in the air.
I don't expect to see him in game one. I mean, it's difficult to talk about with any real, ability to reflect back on something legitimate, because this is a guy who doesn't get hurt. So it's not like we have anything to judge this recent injury against. I mean, the only significant injury the guy suffered in his career is when he broke his leg in the first game he ever played. Since then, he's been, a picture of health. But he is the sort of guy that, like, when he went down with the injury that is going to keep him out for whatever it's going to be, a couple weeks, he refused to leave the game initially. He stayed in, he shot the free throws. That he's a tough guy. I mean, he's absolutely a tough guy, but I think this organization, for as much as Thibodeau has a rep of, like, I don't care if there's a cast on his leg, get him out there. They've been pretty responsible. Now, this is the playoffs, different animal, but I think they'll judge it. And they've had some big games this year that Jalen Brunson certainly has sat out. So I don't think it's crazy to think that Randle's going to sit out game one, especially with, as you said, two days off between 1 and 2.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Who do you guys kind of anticipate if Randle doesn't go for game one? Who do you think would start in his place? And do you think that they would play starters minutes? Or is Tibbs going to, kind of have a nominal starter and maybe rely on a veteran like Josh Hart down the stretch?
Andrew, you want to take it?
It's got to be Obi Toppin to start at least. Yeah. And that's where, look, I admired the last 4 games of the regular season in which Obi got some legitimate run and we got to see him do more than just stand in the corner. I do think there's an offensive ceiling that I don't know of, or don't really know what to fully make of it yet. I don't know if it's necessarily going to matter here in a playoff series. As far as the minutes are concerned, I don't want to. It's disrespectful to say he's the Keith Bogans or Alfred Payton, because I don't think he's going to play like 12 minutes and then bounce. But I think you're going to see him at the beginning of the first quarter and the beginning of the third quarter. And then Josh Hart is really your backup 4. There's an RJ Barrett question, because there's always an RJ Barrett question, and seeing what the Knicks are going to do potentially to play him at the 4 in some minutes. But that's kind of how they'll go about it, in trying to find other ways to really take advantage of what their strength has been, and it's really being beasts on the glass. And it's just not Obi's forte. So I could see really being Josh Hart's the backup 4, but also the closing 4 as a result.
Yeah, I mean, that small ball lineup was part of what Tibbs closed with in the last game, and yielded good results. So you got to imagine, kind of, no matter who starts, I don't think Obi's finishing, even if Obi has an awesome game. But, like, I do think there is a role for a guy like Obi Toppin to play in this series. Like, we talked about it a little bit on the last pod, Andrew, but, like, he's one of the only dudes who gets a ton of threes up. Like, I think it was against the Pacers. Forgive me if I'm wrong, but I think between Obi, Jalen, and Grimes, they took like 36 threes or something like that. Like, I just feel like that's got to be such an important part of this Knicks game plan if they're going to make hay on offense.
That's honestly the biggest takeaway I had from these 4 games of high usage Obi. It's not necessarily that this could have been him all year. It's like, oh, he's got his confidence back. He's got his 3-point shot back. I expected a plan of the Cavaliers to be, well, we'll leave Obi open. And if he's going into this series a little more confident in his 3-point shot, that may be a weapon rather than a weakness, And
you want to talk about playing with house money. That's not the right term for what I'm about to say, but I can't think of a better one. I want to keep the focus on the series, but, like, there's a very good chance Obi Toppin is not going to be on the Knicks next year. I mean, his name is going to be floated this summer. I mean, they spoke with, you mentioned the Pacers, funny enough. They talked with the Pacers about Obi at the trade deadline. They couldn't work out a deal. He's extension eligible. So I wonder if, like, going into the series, Obi is like, listen, I'm going to play my game. I'm going to let it fly if I'm open. And here's the thing, though. He's not going against any game plan, because if you've listened to Tom Thibodeau all year, his mantra, he has many mantras. One of them is, if you're open, shoot the ball. And if we're going to, as we get into the weeds of the series, the Knicks are not going to have a chance in this series if their decent 3-point shooters don't shoot it when they're open.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I do think it's obviously a luxury to be able to close with Josh Hart too, because I think as you guys have noted, and we've noted as well, like the biggest strength, or one of the biggest strengths that the Knicks have is their ability to offensive rebound. So the fact that you can kind of go small, you can stretch out the Cavs defense a little bit while not really losing a whole lot in terms of rebounding, because Josh Hart is just so good on that end.
Yeah.
That's a really nice kind of option to go to. And I almost wonder how quickly Tibbs is going to go to that option, because if they are starting Jalen Brunson, RJ Barrett, and Obi Toppin, I don't know how you guys feel about this, but personally, like I feel like that defensively is something that the Cavs might be able to exploit, and especially early in the series, like in game one, if those three are out there on the court at the same time, that's a decent enough situation for the Cavs to start this series on the right foot offensively.
You're being kind. It's the all-you-could-eat buffet. It's like, here, take 2 plates, take 3 plates. No, I mean, look, Tibbs gets a lot of gruff. I was told I can't curse on this, so I'm going to try very hard not to do so. He gets a lot of stuff from fans about his ways. I think game planning wise, he is knowing that he's going to go in with the starting lineup with, let's call it 2 subpar defenders, or two defenders you could take advantage of, and then RJ is kind of a mixed bag. I'm going to be generous. I think he'll have something planned out. At the same time, like, what Donovan's going to do. He's like, where's Obi? Bring him up into the pick and roll. It's like that's not hard. So yeah, I wonder the same thing.
This isn't on the rundown, so sorry, Justin. Justin does all the work, and then I just ruin it. But something I've been wondering about with this Knicks team is every playoffs, typically we see a role player on a team it's just immediately apparent this isn't their series, and they're not, and the coach has to yank them. We saw that in the play-in with Isaac Okoro, where last year, where Okoro's jumper just wasn't ready, and JB said, "I don't have time to let you work through this. You're out, and I'm going to play other people for the rest of until this thing ends." What player on the Knicks do you think could be that player?
I want to hear Andrew's answer.
So I know what John's thinking.
Well, so like the key question is, what do you mean by role player? Because is the role player the former number 3 pick in the draft who started every game this season, or is there other options?
You think they'd go that nuclear with him?
I do. Not to the point where he's like pulled from the rotation completely, but RJ will have these first halves where, because he's not defending and also 0 for 9 and 1 of 8 and 0 of 6 from 3, that it's like, okay, we need you to turn it around in the second half. But the reason we're either tied or losing by double digits in the first half is because teams knew to let you shoot, and your inability to be effective on offense has become a weakness. I don't think they're going to give him a chance to figure it out in the second half anymore. So my hope is that he doesn't have that first half and he's actually effective in this series. But my curiosity is, because they have so many options at wing, because of how Emmanuel Quickley has played this season, because of what Josh Hart has been since February 10th, because of what Quentin Grimes has been for the last 3 weeks, is the Knicks just kind of pull the plug and go with the other more effective options that they have in the second half. So, and that's the funny part. I'm not worried about literally anybody else. Like, to Julius, to an extent, because of what happened 2 years ago against Atlanta, I'm really not worried about anybody else. Deuce McBride we've seen 6-minute stints of him. He's there to play defense, and if he's hitting his shot, he'll play more defense. But John, I don't know about you, but it's an RJ question, and it's really only an RJ question.
It's an RJ question, and it's a Julius question, because and Benji nailed this on our pod the other night. If Julius is in there and gives you the secondary creator, and obviously Brunson's going to be in there, and for the majority of the game, one of those guys is always going to be on the floor, and for a lot of the game, both of those guys are going to be on the floor, then RJ's ability to initiate becomes much less important, and the abilities of your Quickleys and your Grimes and your Josh Harts of the world become much more important. I agree with Andrew. I don't think I see anything in this series that would be as drastic as him being like benched altogether, but could I see this series going in a direction where he plays under 20 minutes in a game or two? Like, yeah, that's absolutely on the table. just real quick on the Obi thing, because he's the only other possible answer.
I was about
for
to
this.
say, I feel like you guys are maybe not weighing the Obi possibility enough, because if he gets run off if the starters are getting run off the floor, like I doubt Tibbs will continue.
Yeah, well, so it's weird because again, the Randle uncertainty is out there. If we assume that Randle is back at the very least by game 3, let's assume that he's
there's
back by
around
game
46 off days before game 3. I just checked the
exactly.
schedule. So
I'm assuming he'll be back by game 2. Let's assume he's back worst case scenario by game 3. I think no matter how badly game 1 goes, I would be very surprised, assuming Randle is out for game 2, if he did not start the game at the very least with Obi at the 4. But moving forward in the series after Randle comes back, knock on wood, your minutes with Obi are going to be, I would guess, if it goes poorly in the first couple games, if they're really targeting him on defense, I would think those minutes are only going to be when Donovan Mitchell is off the floor. And I think that they will keep putting him out there because if it's one thing that Tibbs does kind of like to do, he likes to keep some semblance of his usual order. And again, I know it's the playoffs. Things changed in the playoffs. We saw Alfred Payton get benched a couple of years ago after he went with him for reasons known only to him for the entire season. So it's not like it can't happen, but I would say it would be more like later in the series you're going to see maybe Obi 5 minutes in a first half, maybe doesn't get off the bench in the second half type of thing. That would be where I would see it go, if at all.
Yeah, that makes sense. And to some extent, it's the double-edged sword of having depth, right? And I would certainly prefer to have that problem. I think depth is one of the Knicks' many strengths in this series. But when you do have a lot of depth and you have guys that necessarily haven't really like solidified their spot in the rotation and they don't have a lot of playoff experience, you can kind of be feeling that pressure, right? Like I'm looking over my shoulder every time I make a bit of a mistake. And that's going to be a really interesting thing for guys like RJ, Obi, Quentin Grimes in his first playoff series. And then on the Cavs side, that probably won't be the case with the starters. They know that they're going to be playing. But outside of that, whether it's Dean Wade, Jetty Osman, Lamar Stevens, if he gets in, Ricky Rubio, Ricky has experience, but you know what I mean? Like the guys that don't necessarily have as solidified of a role, I can see the depth of the Knicks kind of forcing them to look over their shoulder just a little bit, knowing that, hey, there are other like viable options that Tibbs can go to.
Yeah, I mean, so, you know, the team has been interesting this year in that once they made the trade for Josh Hart, in theory, it was a recipe for disaster because you had Hart coming in, who you knew from the day he was acquired, he was going to be closing every game. And he has, I think, Andrew, correct me if I'm wrong, he's closed every game that he's been in?
Every game that he's been available for, yes.
Every game he's been available for. Okay. So that leaves with Brunson and Randle healthy, and it hasn't been maybe as big of an issue because one of those guys has been hurt here and there. Most recently Randle, before that Brunson. You have in the other three guys for one spot, as Andrew alluded to before, former number 3 pick in the draft, former face of the franchise, averaged 24 a game for 3.5 months last season in RJ Barrett. You have the leader or co-leader, whatever you want to say, for 6th man of the year, and Emmanuel Quickley. And then ho-hum Quentin Grimes, all he's done this season is just get better and better and better to the point where that dude's made more three-pointers than anybody in basketball except Klay Thompson over the last, I think, 3 weeks of the season. He is absolutely scorching right now, and he offers you so much consistency on both ends of the floor. That's I think it's a recipe for disaster. And now I'm going to be hokey talking head guy. I think there really is something special about this team where there is a genuine selflessness. And I think at the very least in the case of Grimes, and as odd as it is to say Hart, because he's an expiring contract, I think these guys are in it for the long haul. Quickley's the one guy I wonder about because there were the trade rumors earlier this year, and you wonder, does he wonder, like, are his days here numbered? I hope not. We all love Quickley, and we don't have to go anywhere. But I think it's something where I'm not worried about any issues arising and the depth being a purely positive quality.
Yeah, just to double down on that, the Quentin Grimes love. the only stat I pulled up for him for this was in the last 19 games, which is March 1st until now. He's shooting 45% on 3 on 7 attempts, which the volume has continued to go up. And as a result, the percentage has continued to go up. It's why the uniqueness of the question you asked, Carter, was like, what role player are you worried about? Like, yes, the Obi is technically a role player at the end of the day, but I've seen Tibbs like play him 9 minutes and it just be part of the strategy. Yeah. I could see that being the thing they do. The rest of the role players outside of RJ, I have so much confidence in them at the moment. Yeah. To speak to John's point about like how like quote unquote special all of this is, they've just all gotten better and better. Any hint of adversity they've faced, they've met with a winning streak almost every time. So I'm curious if
literally
they just had a huge, like this moment in Orlando where Emmanuel Quickley and Julius Randle got in each other's faces, right? What happened after that was a 5-game winning streak to clinch a playoff berth. So yeah, I'm very high on this team, at least the role players on this team going forward.
I am as well, and apparently so is that autoplay ad. Was that you,
I was wondering what that was. It wasn't me.
No, it's yeah. I don't know where it came from, so I got a little homework to do.
I really hope it wasn't me.
That's on me.
I didn't know that how it could go from me. So.
You know what? We'll fix it in post, baby. Don't you worry
about it. Sorry, guys.
I have actually been pretty surprised. Like, listening to a lot of preview content, listening to national media talk about it. Obviously, there's going to be animosity among player avatar Twitter. They're going to go at each other, but there seems to be like a lot of mutual respect. And I like this Knicks team, and I don't know if that's going to be the case after this series. Nothing like 7 games to change that, and for guys to grind your gears a little bit. But I like a lot of these guys they have, and obviously the support that they get from the bench has been phenomenal all year. It's been as good as the support we get from our sponsor, Zoom. Support for this podcast and the following message comes from Zoom. 500,000 businesses connect using Zoom, a single platform for phone, chat, workspaces, events, apps, and video. Zoom enables real-time collaboration for teams around the globe. Zoom, how the world connects.
Well done,
Carter.
Justin.
How's that for a segue?
Well done.
That was special, by the way.
Yes,
I appreciate that. You know, we haven't had a pod for a few days and wasn't sure if I was going to be a little rusty. Came through pretty nice.
You weren't thrilled with your last one, if I recall. So, you know,
I wasn't.
It's good to see you knock off the rust and show that you've got that champion DNA.
And speaking of rust, both the Knicks and Cavs will be coming off a bit of a layoff before this game 1. They're going to have a lot of time. Basically, there's the opportunity for these teams to have like a mini training camp going into the series. Are you guys concerned that there is going to be a little rust? Because I can see a path to game 1 looking a little bit sloppy with neither of these teams really playing a meaningful basketball game in quite some time.
I'm not. It's not. I'll admit it's not something I spent a ton of time thinking about because the focus has been so much on Julius needing the time to recover. So I haven't thought of potential downsides to the rest. I also think Jalen Brunson, as I'm sure you guys know, has been dealing with like a little bit of a hand thing. I don't think it's serious. I think if they needed to play him at the end of the season, they would have played him. But I guess from my point of view, I don't even know if it's as much physically as it is mentally and maybe like emotionally or whatever. This team for really for like 77, 78 games, if we felt it as a fan base at least, and you always hear that like the players like it more gets made of it, or we think more of it as on the fan side than the players do in the locker room. To the players, it's like, look, let's move on to the next game. But it has felt in Knicks land like it's been like living on edge for so even with the winning streaks, because it seems like there's always a different pitfall, whether it's Brunson going down with an injury, Mitchell Robinson going down with an injury, or you know we're losing a grip on a playoff spot, or all these different things. I have to think maybe the time to just settle down has been a positive. Again, I'm speaking out of my rear end. I don't know that for a fact, but that's the only response I would have to that question.
Yeah, so it's funny that you mentioned that, because I think the Cavs are also cherishing it a little bit. You know, I kind of got the impression, just reading between the lines with some post game comments, that like this this stress to get to the playoffs, to lock up home court, I think was kind of wearing on the guys. Like they were playing, especially after a rough January. I think they kind of locked into, quote unquote, like pre-playoff mode a little earlier than they meant to. Especially with the East being as bananas as it is, and they were still chasing the 3 at the time. So I think they kind of needed the rest. I think they had some players that ultimately needed some R&R themselves, like Isaac Okoro is still dealing with that reported bone bruise. Yep. Donovan Mitchell, he still has the lingering finger issue. Jared Allen had the strained groin. So like there's a lot of time for just folks to rest up from some of these soft tissue injuries as well. And then ultimately, I just think, like, I don't know if people might call it rust, but I kind of suspect the first quarter is going to be hideous.
I think so too.
Because whether it's rusty or not, there's just so many dudes for whom this is new, and I think players are going to be jacked up, playing maybe 15% faster than you thought. Because I think a lot of Cavs fans, including myself, before. Smart people like Andrew and other Knicks fans kind of educated us. Kind of thought that the Knicks had a little bit more experience in the postseason than they do. This is a wildly young team. Julius Randle, despite having the face of a 33-year-old, is only 28.
28 years old, yeah.
And I believe he's only got 1 or 2 series under his belt. So for the most part, like, this Knicks team really hasn't been just the one. Okay. Yeah. Like, this Knicks team hasn't had a lot of the core members of the rotation get a ton of playoff reps. Like, these teams are not terribly dissimilar on that front.
Carter, you know who has the most playoff experience in the current rotation? I think I'm right on this, right, John? It's Jalen Brunson, who went to the conference finals last year.
I think
sounds right to me.
In the current rotation, the only question I'm wondering is if you add up the playoff experience for every other member on the roster, does it add up to the amount of playoff games that Jalen Brunson has played in? And I could, if you want to filibuster for a minute, I'll look it up.
Well, so the curious part about, are we counting Derrick Rose as part of the roster? Then
no, rotation, just rotation,
right? Yeah. So if you go to the rotation, Derrick Rose can tell all these kids about the tales of the battles against the Cavs and the battles against the Heat in the early 2010s. Evan Fournier can give some first-round playoff loss stories.
Yeah. Derrick Rose can talk about stealing Game 1 in Cleveland, back in 2015. Yeah,
there you go.
It really
you know this funny. Very well.
That was actually the last time I attended that was my first time attending a playoff game. But like, outside of Mitchell and Brunson, like, it's pretty much blank slate when it comes to playoff experience. Like, Jared Allen and Karis LeVert, I think, both have 9 games of playoff experience. RJ and Randle have 5 each. And, like, outside of that, it's an unknown. And these teams really are the Spider-Man meme in a lot of ways. And it's interesting, too, because while there's unknowns in how these guys are going to have their games translate to the playoffs, there's also just an unknown of what this series is going to look like, because the Cavs only had 1 game with their starting lineup against the Knicks. And in that game, the Knicks were missing Mitchell Robinson, who is a very important part. He's going to be one of those key X factors, someone that can get those second possessions. And obviously, he's a force on the interior as well. So
can I quickly do a quick callback to that episode of Knicks Film School with Fred Katz?
Yes, absolutely.
I think y'all are ranking Robinson too low on the importance rankings.
Really?
I feel like he's very important, because I think he's one of your higher ceiling players when he's really impacting the game. And and Andrew, you kind of mentioned it when you were on with us last week, was like, if he's at his ceiling as a player and around the same performance as Jared Allen, like, that's really, really important. Like, if that's a draw, this series looks a lot different than if the Cavs have a clear advantage at the 5.
So first of all, just to wrap up the point on the playoff games, Brunson has 25 playoff games under his belt. Every other rotation Nick added all up is 22, and I'm counting two games where Hartenstein was not a rotation player that he played at some point earlier in his career. Regarding Mitchell Robinson, I hear that argument, and the point that I've been trying to make here and there is that for as much as Isaiah Hartenstein has been the better of the 2 centers over certainly the last month, and I think there's an argument that he could go even further back than that, and he may be the better center for this series for a variety of little minutia reasons. When Mitchell Robinson is on, and I think that's what you're really getting at here. When Mitchell Robinson is on, and Mitchell Robinson is like, He is feeling himself, and he is in all of his social media glory, the whole thing. You can't really stop that dude. You can't keep him off the offensive glass. You certainly can't do anything around the rim if he's in there. And perhaps most destructively, I'll say, he can really, really, really damage your pick and roll game if on defense, when he's on defense and you're trying to execute pick and rolls on the offensive end of the floor. The reason why I am hesitant with that very last part is the further up to the level you bring Mitch, I think the less effective he is. And when you have a guy like Donovan Mitchell who could pull up from, whatever zip code you want to reference in the greater Cleveland area, like I just wonder how much they're going to be able to rely on him versus Hartenstein is a little bit better in that sort of coverage. That's the only pushback that I would have. But Mitch is awesome.
That actually transitions really well to my first real kind of tactical question, which is, what do you kind of expect the Knicks to try to take away to start this series? Because I actually had it in my mind that we'd actually see a fair amount of drop from the Knicks, and obviously that would be more suited to what Mitchell Robinson can do, just kind of daring Darius Garland to maybe pull up and take those shots and take Mobley and Allen out of the game. Like, what do you expect the kind of defensive philosophy and what they'd be trying to take away from the Cavs to be in that first game?
So I'm gonna reference my Lord and Savior Tom Thibodeau. When you have to play great players, great players require great special attention. He has a certain phrase, but I'm messing up that phrase. But the phrase that I know I will not mess up is you guard great players with your team, and he will have a plan. Like, I don't think he's going to let Donovan Mitchell beat them in the way that he utterly destroyed them in the first quarter. Now, I do think it was notable that after Donovan had, 31 in the first half, he only got 12 in the second half in that game, and that was a game he was absolutely feeling it. And they did switch some things up. I don't think they'll wait that long in this series, so I have to think the focus is going to be on Donovan Mitchell. And at the same time, we've also seen a game earlier this season where Luka Doncic went for 60 points against the Knicks. And the Knicks' philosophy in that game, and me and Andrew watched it together, and for 47 and a half minutes, it was a really good philosophy. Mm-hmm. Luka's going to get his. We're going to make sure all of his kick out, BS, all that stuff, that's not going to bear fruit. And the Knicks had a double-digit lead with 30 seconds left. Nine
points. Almost a double-digit lead.
9 points, excuse me. 9-point lead with 30 seconds left. And we were all very happy, and we don't have to discuss anything else about that game. But, but I think the reason this is different is because, the Cavs, I don't think that philosophy is going to work as well. I'll just say that. I think they're going to have to key in on Donovan a little bit more and feel confident in their other players' ability to handle the other guys on the offensive end.
To John's point, the Knicks' strategy of guarding another team's great player with your team, to an extent, has worked not in the sense that the guy hasn't gone off like John's mentioning with this Luka game, but the 3 times they've played Giannis this year, the second and third time wasn't they were in the game down the stretch because it was either let Giannis get his or let's create this wall that Giannis can't get through. And if Joe Ingles and all these other 3-point shooters that the Bucks have just happen to be on that night, then you're good. A thing that I'm looking to pay attention to, which I don't know how much to take from that Friday night game, because while it was nice that the Knicks won and Brunson went off, I recognize that Okoro and Allen weren't there, and the Knicks were able to get everything at the rim because Allen wasn't there, and Jalen Brunson had 48 points because Okoro wasn't there. Now, I don't think, I know the last time I was here, you guys were Okoro's, you didn't call him a Brunson stopper, but it was implied that Brunson's life will be made more difficult, which in the times he did play against them, it was. I don't think Brunson's going to average 48 in a series if Okoro doesn't play. I don't think he's going to average 12 if he does. Mm-hmm. So I think they're
a famous 36-point swing player, Isaac Okoro.
Exactly. But my point being is I am curious if the Cavs do decide that the defensive upswing that an Allen and an Okoro bring is enough that we want to keep them on the floor at all times to stop the Knicks. Whereas the biggest takeaway I had from that game from a Cavs perspective was like, oh, this is the best spacing that they've probably had all season,
Yeah,
because
that's been the trade-off
on Mobley at this. So I'm wondering if the Cavs decide to go with more spacing, are the Knicks able to take advantage of that and shoot nuclear like they did that night? Or is it like to their benefit to have the Cavs go without their 3-point shooting, which is a benefit to the Knicks and the type of coverage they like to play?
Well, for better or worse, Andrew, Isaac Okoro's been one of their better 3-point shooters,
especially on corners. Believe me, I know.
In the non-Darius Donnie division. Ultimately, like I think Jarrett's going to play no matter what. I just don't see any world. Like the reality is, this team has 5 dudes that they really trust right now that are playing good basketball. It's the core 4. And then Karras, who has had the best month of his Cavs career coming into the game, and Isaac, who I think they trust right now, but I mean they pulled him 10 minutes into 2 play-in games last year, so like I'm not like all the way on JB's just 100% ready to trust the guy, but like he just doesn't have enough horses that like it's not like you put in Jetty and Jetty's gonna hit 50% of his open threes. Like it's not
against us.
Yeah, well, but he also had, in that second half, he had some of the ugliest misses you'll ever see on those open threes. So, like, I think
that's true. No, he did. You're right.
So ultimately, I think like they're gonna play big because that's the identity of the team. Playing those two together, I'm very interested. Our boy Fred Katz. I thought put Dean Wade a little too high on his importance rankings. I don't think he.
You think?
I don't know if our boy's been watching as much Cavs the last month because he was out of the rotation. 2.5 weeks ago. I do think Dean is going to get a shot because to our point earlier, the rebounding's just been abysmal, and the lineup data when Dean and one of the bigs is on the floor, or one of the Mobley or Allen is on the floor. It's pretty good. They actually get boards, and when Jetty is playing the 4, when Karras is playing the 4, like those guys are barely threes, and I just can't see them playing into the Knicks' hands that way because what do the Knicks want? They want to match Jetty Osman with Josh Hart. Like what a win to give Tom Thibodeau.
Yeah, and I think so much is made of Jared Allen's impact on the defensive end, but really he moves the needle a lot. Like when you look at the lineup data, he moves the needle a ton on the offensive end because a lot of what the Knicks were able to do kind of in that fourth quarter to limit Donovan Mitchell, like Allen frees them up so much. And even though he doesn't add 3-point spacing, there's still that vertical spacing, right? Like he's a good passer out of the short roll.
He's a better straight up roll man than Evan Mobley is right now.
And also the 3-man action with Garland, Mitchell, and either Mobley or Allen becomes more effective when the other big is in the dunker spot. And like when you're able to, like, you have to pay attention to them. So I think the one out of that mix that would kind of be in question would be Isaac Okoro, right? Like I think Caris LeVert would be the option that they might go to, shooting 39% from 3 this year. And you look at the lineup data, their best lineup on the year is still the core 4 with Caris LeVert. And I don't think it's a coincidence that Caris has been playing a whole lot better since the trade deadline, when his name was in almost every single rumor with the Cavs heading up to that deadline. And since then, he's been playing free. He's been playing with more confidence. So
he's shooting the ball.
Yeah.
Both in volume and in mix.
Shots. Yeah, that was actually the problem, was he was passing, he was playing defense, and just wasn't really taking a lot of shots. But now he is. So I do think Karras, in the same way that Josh Hart closes games for you guys, I think Karras is likely going to be that 5th guy in a lot of situations, unless Okoro's just having a great game.
Can I jump in with 2 quick things in response to all that? Because you made so many great points. One thing with Okoro that I do think deserves mention. In the game that he ate Brunson alive, Jericho Sims was starting that game for the Knicks because Mitch Robinson was out and they wanted to keep Hartenstein with the backups. Jericho Sims is a nice player. Don't get me wrong. He's also a second-year player who was the 58th pick in the draft a year ago. And as far as the subtleties of like springing your guard with high screens, like not quite where it's at.
He's not Mitch Rob.
Well, I mean,
or Hardenstein for that matter.
Hardenstein's the guy. And again, this is why, I mean, there's so many questions about the series, but the one you asked, I think, is probably first for the Knicks, which is how soon does he go to his bench? Because there are arguments that, like, they're better with Hardenstein in there, that they're better with Quickley in there, that they're better with Harden there. So, but just to focus real quick on the Sims thing, whether it's Mitch or Hardenstein, and I have to think that they have obviously been preparing for what to do when Okoro's all up in Brunson's grill and like the screen comes. I think the Knicks are going to be more ready for that than they appeared to be in that third matchup. That's one thing. And then just the last thing, this is more of a general thing, and I thought of it as you were talking. I feel like playoff series take on the tenor by, a long playoff series, certainly, by maybe game 3 or game 4. Is this a series where it's who can figure out how to get buckets in a fourth quarter that's going to win this game? Or is it a series where it's like, we know how to score on you, you know how to score on us. It's whoever gets a stop in the fourth quarter. And I wonder if that doesn't dictate a little bit of which of these guys, for both teams, certainly. But I think especially Cleveland, it winds up getting the big minutes.
Man, I loved that. I love that take. And I think you're 100% right. And I think, it's funny because based on how each team probably wants this series to go, I think the Cavs are like, we'd love it to be a figure out who's going to figure out how to get buckets series versus figuring out who's going to get stop series, I feel like, and I really like that context about Sims because, we're so quick to contextualize our losses. Right, like where we go,
everybody is.
Yeah, I wanted to joke about our friend of the pod, Steve Jones, was threading some good stuff about this series, and there was a play where the Knicks got an easy bucket, and Ricky, Robin, and Jetty were on the floor together with Karras, and I forget who else. I was like, this is a lineup that like something has gone so horrifically wrong in the postseason if we see this 5. And I wanted to be like, well, yeah, you can throw out that Brunson game, but like again, you can throw, there are mitigating factors on all this stuff in the regular season, and that's why it's like so hard to actually evaluate what we're going to see, because as good as Okoro is, like, I mean, Brunson has been amazing, and to your point with the playoff experience, he's one of the only players in this series that has had the first wave of adjustments thrown at him, where he adjusts and is still great. And I feel like that's the thing that we have. He and Mitchell are two people who have crossed that threshold. Can anyone else say that in this series?
No. Like that's my biggest question when it comes to Darius Garland, because like in a vacuum over the course of regular season, and I know any Knicks listeners aren't going to like this, like I do think that Garland is up there in that tier with Jalen Brunson. Like Garland was the best player on a 44-win team, a team that was close to being the 1 seed before it got derailed with injuries, averaging 25 and 10. Didn't have an all-NBA teammate. Like he's really, really good. But I think Carter brought up the right point, which is Brunson already has that experience. Like he had the playoff series where people were saying, he's too small, he's not able to make the passes, and he knows how to make those adjustments, and that experience really matters. And from the Cavs perspective, you want Garland to be at his best, because if he's at his best and he's like making a conversation, if the conversation is, who's playing better, Darius Garland and Jalen Brunson, that's a win for the Cavs.
This is a fast Cavs series, if that's the discussion, I would imagine.
Right, which on your side, you're hoping the conversation is who's playing better out, Jalen Brunson and Donovan Mitchell, right? Like you're because we've seen Jalen Brunson elevate his game to that level as well. And the chess match of this is so interesting to me. And there's so many trade-offs that these teams can make. And I'm curious too, like, the Knicks do love to kind of run, let's say Randle's in. I think the games and the discussion's most interesting when Randle's in. Like when you're running the 2-man action with Brunson and Randle, if Okoro's on Brunson and Jared Allen's on Randle, or Mobley's on Mitchell Robinson, like given the versatility of Okoro, Mobley, and Allen defensively, like do you think that those kind of bread and butter plays are going to be as effective? Because the Cavs can either fight through it, so they don't auto switch like some teams. But if they do switch and you're able to force that switch, it's not really the same kind of advantage that they would normally generate. Like, do you have confidence in the Knicks being able to generate good offense out of those looks?
I think that's up to Julius Randle and what
Good
version
answer.
of Julius Randle we're going to get. And I'm not talking about health. I mean, it's partially about health. This entire series is about his health, but Randle has shown at times this year the capability of being a very fast decision maker and a good decision maker. And when he is on his game in that specific way, he's just a load, and he's a really tough guy to stop because, like, I understand conceptually, you're like, okay, the Cavs are going to be comfortable with that one-on-one matchup, whether it's a Coro or Allen or Mobley switched on to whatever it is. He has a way of drawing the attention of a defense when he gets going and he's in his wheelhouse, especially after he hits a couple tough shots.
We saw that. Yeah, I know.
8 threes, 36 points in that third game. Yeah. At the Garden.
He's a funny guy in that he frightens a lot of Knicks fans still when he gets going, because Knicks fans know when Julius could get into his own bag too much, that it could go too much in the wrong direction. And I think if you're an opposing fan watching, it could be frightening for a whole different set of reasons. So it's a matter of, can he stay locked in? Can he obviously just hit some tough shots? I mean, listen, you're an all NBA player. You're taking tough shots, you're hitting tough shots. And if those things go well, and to throw it back to what you said a minute ago, if after 4 games, 5 games, 6 games, we're saying, okay, between Mitchell, Garland, Brunson, Randle, those 4 have been about even. I think that's advantage Knicks ever so slightly. I think I could be wrong about that, but that's maybe the homer in me coming up.
Yeah, I think that is probably true. I do think it's worth asking the question, because the other duo that has a lot of interest to me is the Jared Allen Emmanuel Quickley combo. Because those two feel like the swing guys in a lot of ways. Because I think every single Cavs fan you ask would tell you Jared Allen is a much superior player to Emmanuel Quickley if you're just ranking the players. And every single Knicks fan I've heard from is putting Quickley above Jared Allen.
Myself included, yes.
Yeah.
And I think, like, in a lot of ways, those are like, I know neither of those guys are role players, quote unquote. They I think that both of them have graduated out of that title at this point. They're just more important than that in terms of their volume / like how integral they are to what each team is doing. But like, those feel like the swing guys. Like, if those top 4 guys that you just mentioned are drawing dead, I don't think either team is inherently screwed in that spot. But then that Jared Allen, who's playing well of that, that third guy on each team, third or fourth guy, because by the way, we're not talking about Evan Mobley, but I do think that that like tier 2.5 player, which I think both Allen and Quickley right now kind of occupy in terms of where their fans think they are. Like, I feel like it's going to be a big, like, is Quickley as good as we think he is for Knicks fans? And it's going to be a big, is Jarrett as clearly as a top 5-6 center that we think he is in Cleveland?
Carter, can I ask you a question?
Of course.
In the player rankings, would you have Allen? Would you have Quickley ahead of Allen, or I guess it's obvious you'd have Allen ahead of Quickley, right?
I would.
Okay, so how blasphemous is it if I don't think the conversation is Quickley and Jared Allen? I think it's Quickley or Evan Mobley.
It's aggressively blasphemous.
Okay, because for
No
me,
way.
the conversation is when you go to third best players in the series, is it the guy on your team that's taken a defensive leap and is in the all defense and defensive player of the year conversation? And it's the guy on our team that throughout this season, the more opportunity he's gotten, the more he's run with it and shown he deserves to be getting even more and more. First, it was like, Tibbs, play him more than 12 minutes. How's that? Then it was, okay, let's shorten the rotation to 9 so that way he can play 20 to 25 minutes a game. Then it was, okay, you cannot survive without him playing 30 minutes a game. Now he's the de facto 6th starter, which by the way, is what a sixth man should be, everybody in Boston. And now we're at the point where throughout these portions of the season when he started, you've wondered, were they better off all season if we had 82 games of Immanuel Quickley starting anyway? That's how high I am on Immanuel Quickley and how he matches up as far as the pecking order is concerned. I mean, he's never going to guard Evan Mobley. That's not what I'm saying by matching up. As far as like our third best guy
output
taking a leap, right? The leap he's taken this season has me wondering, like it's like for way after this series, what contract he's going to get, because he might be coming off a sixth man of the year campaign. But that's how high I am on Quickley.
Justin, if I might quickly pose just not even a question, just
quickly,
a statement.
well done. Quickly do this. Go ahead.
Just a statement. I'm pretty sure the Cavs were right to start Evan Mobley all 82 games. So, that alone, ultimately.
Every single Knick fan will tell you, like, the season really restarted on December 5th when they got rid of. Well, okay. The end of the first part of the season, John, is December. Oh, you're right. So 4th. December 5th is a Sunday.
Oh, I love how you were pushing back. You were pushing back with a fury, and then you're like, damn it, you're right.
So I'm trying to remember. When was the Mavs game?
The Mavs game was December. I know because I've written it 8,000 times. Right. The Mavs game was December 3rd. The Cavs game was December 4th.
Okay, so this Cavs, you guys remember this. The Cavs game on December 4th, right? The Cavs didn't shoot well that night, but
47 travels or whatever it was.
That was the record travel night.
The night of 1,000 travels, yeah.
So that's how you remember it. The way Knicks fans remember it, they went to a 9-man rotation. Derrick Rose was taken out for good. God bless him. Evan Fournier, we haven't seen him really since, other than a couple of spot starts. Cam Reddish, God bless him, playing all the minutes he wants in Portland. And Immanuel Quickley and this 9-man rotation is on a 56-win pace since then. So as a result of that moment till now, it's a different look to the team. There's questions going into next season who the starting two guard is, whether it should be Immanuel Quickley or RJ Barrett / Quentin Grimes in the rotation. That's how good Quickley's been. Every lineup, every 2-man lineup that Immanuel Quickley is in is a positive. Every time he is on the floor, the Knicks are better. And it's why he's the one where we're going just by pecking order and output, as you put, Carter. He's the one that gives me any hint of confidence in this series, given that we get a version of Julius Randle that A, is healthy and B, isn't a pumpkin.
I just want to add, just like conceptually, it's for me a guy, and Immanuel Quickley since the All-Star break, using Basketball References usage number, has had a 25 usage rate in whatever it's been, 20 some odd games, versus Jared Allen obviously is not that, he's like whatever it is, 15 or 16. So if you're a center with that level of usage, do you have to have like a prime Rudy Gobert level impact to be on the same footing as a guy who's efficient and plays really good defense and like has that usage in a Quickley, or can you be like a notch below that? Can you be a top 3 center? Can you be a top 4? I don't know. That gets into semantics. The thing that's more interesting to me about Quickley in this series is he a guy that, if the Knicks know that they could repeatedly get, let's say, Garland on him, matched up on him, or he, like, Garland is the one guarding him down the stretch of games, that it gets to a point where Quickley's like, just, he's going to cook, and they're going to let him cook, and that's how they're going to run their offense, down the stretch of games with a healthy Jalen Brunson and with a healthy Julius Randle. That is a thing that I might have to see to believe, because for all of Quickley's explosions this year, like the 55-minute 30, what do you have, 38 points
38,
in the Boston, 38 in the Boston Garden, like Jalen Brunson didn't play that game. There have been many other very high-scoring games for Immanuel Quickley this year. Usually someone big is out, even if it's just RJ. So I don't know. I don't know if I share. I love Immanuel Quickley just as much as Andrew, to be clear, and every Knicks fan. But like, I don't know if I share the level of confidence that like Immanuel Quickley, we're going to look back and like Immanuel Quickley will have been the difference.
I feel like Quickley is your special boy, to quote Succession. I think you guys.
Number one boy.
Oh yeah, no, I'm sorry.
You're good.
He's so good though.
Yeah, I feel like he's just really the kind of player Knicks fans have really glommed onto. Just a classic, like, beloved Knick. I said this. I hopped on the Big Nick Energy podcast again. Love that title. And I I said it there, and then maybe I'm sure I'm going to eat my words. I don't think this is a good matchup for Emmanuel Quickley. I just don't. I think.
Why would you put that into the universe?
Because we
the
have
shooting
to.
luck we've had all season.
Listen, Andrew just said him. Quickley's going to out. You're out.
I didn't. Okay.
You just said Quickley's going to outplay Evan Mobley.
That is not what I said. What I said was, it's as far as the pecking order is concerned, the question isn't him or Allen. It's him or Mobley. I would probably choose Mobley.
Probably,
but that's the tier that we're on.
Probably. Hold on. Let me actually make my point instead of just yelling at me.
Go ahead.
So I do feel like one of Quickley's superpowers is that floater. I think there are a few teams harder to get floaters over in the NBA than the Cavaliers. I think he's going to have to add that 5 to 7 degrees of arc that takes that shot from like a 50% shot for him, which is a crazy percentage, to like a 44% shot. And like, is his pull up at the level right now where he can reliably hit that 15-footer instead of taking those extra steps in? I think we're going to have to see it.
It's happened this look, we'll see what happens under playoff pressure, but like floater range is 4 to 14 feet. Like it's not all 8-foot floaters for him. There's a lot of stuff from the longer part of that range. The thing with Quickley is like, if Brunson and Randle are both in there, you're not going to get beat over the head with his greatness or anything in these games, but you will find yourself like in big moments be like, man, there's that guy again doing something good for the Knicks, whether it's hitting a big 3-pointer or drawing a foul or like, beginning of the fourth quarter, maybe Brunson's out, maybe Randall's out, whatever. And it's just like, oh, there's 3 buckets in 3 minutes from Emmanuel Quickley. Like he fills in so many gaps for them. And there's a reason why, along with Brunson, Randle, and since they got him, Josh Hart, like Quickley's the guy who closes the majority of the games.
I feel like I have some learning to do about Emmanuel Quickley, frankly. Like I don't all the way get it, especially on the defensive end, where I look at the physical profile and I go, why is he an awesome defender? I feel like I'm going to learn a lot.
It's because point of attack is probably more what it gets focused on. And as we discussed last time, that's not the place he's the most impactful. It's passing lanes. It's being a help defender. It's like some of the more impact metrics are high on him because of the little things he does. Like he's one of the better rebounding guards in the league. Like that's the thing John's talking about. It's like Emmanuel Quickley just got a 7th rebound of the game. Whoa, what do you know? Like he fits what the Knicks profile is. The other thing is, aside from like him being a floater god, he's also been so much better the more opportunity he's gotten finishing with contact. And look, I have no idea what whistle we're going to get in this series. Will there be a Madison Square Garden edge? I know that
whistle's going to be important, man.
Right. So as a result, Emmanuel Quickley has benefited from a good whistle at times this season. And if the Knicks are getting a whistle, Emmanuel Quickley will be able to take advantage of it. So yeah, there's plenty of angles that he can be impactful from.
Yeah, I agree. And I feel like we're all going to learn a lot about each other's players. And like, I'll even say, like, I think Darius Garland's a better defender than you're giving him credit for too. Like if you go by EPM in terms of guards in the series, Emmanuel Quickley's number 1 among all guards. No real surprise there. 93rd percentile. Darius Garland's number 2 at 80 percentile, right? So he's done a good job sticking with guys. I think there are still situations where length is going to bother him. We're going to find out, because like it's interesting, Carter, that you went IQ versus Allen, because in so much of the discourse that I've consumed already to this point, is Jared Allen and Mitchell Robinson a push, or can Jared Allen and Isaiah Hartenstein, is that going to be a push for the series? And I've also heard, like, is Emmanuel Quickley and Darius Garland going to be a push? And if those questions are as ridiculous as we feel they are, I feel like it benefits the Cavs. And like I said earlier, is Darius Garland and Jalen Brunson going to be the conversation? If that's the case, it's going to be a good series for the Cavs in all likelihood. So I'm really interested to hear and see how this all kind of shakes out.
Do you guys agree?
Go ahead, sorry.
I'm sorry. I was going to ask, do you guys agree that this is like the highest variance series on the board for the postseason right now? In terms of like, I just feel like the top, the way you might rank the best players in the series versus the way that they might end up being ranked by the end of 5, 6, 7 games, like, could be so disparate. Like, I just feel like, you know, like, no one in a vacuum is picking Mitchell Robinson over Jared Allen, but Jared Allen might draw dead, or, you know, Mitchell Robinson might outplay him a few games. You know, Emmanuel Quickley might
rebounds, offensive rebounds in a game, right?
Quickley might outplay Garland. Garland might outplay Brunson. Brunson might outplay Mitchell. Like, like this is just so not a sum of their parts series to me, because like it almost feels irrelevant because of the way, you know, the floor and ceiling for each of these teams is really, really quite disparate. And to that end, like, even though we're going to get to predictions soon, even though my pick is a relatively confident Cavs one, it doesn't really reflect my confidence that the Cavs will 100% get to that outcome. Whereas I think other series are a little more cut and dry.
The only reason I'll disagree with calling it a high variance series is because I think these two, certainly the Knicks, and from what I could gather about the Cavs, they know exactly who they are. They know what they want to do on every possession. And this has been said by people far smarter than me, so I'm parroting all of them. But, like, watching them night in and night out, like, the best thing for me personally about being a Knicks fan and watching the season is, after so many years of watching a team where not only were they bad, it's like they didn't even know what they wanted to be good. Like,
Spider-Man.
this team knows this team knows exactly what it wants to be on every possession, and with very few exceptions, they mostly execute on that intent. So, and I think the Cavs are the same way. So from that perspective, I don't like, but what you also said, it also makes a lot of sense. So yeah,
I think the high variance of it, in the sense of, like, could we be redoing our list at the end of this, and it's like, wow, I was wrong. Like, Quickley's now 7th behind like all these other guys that Carter had mentioned, or to the opposite end, like, wow, like, Quickley might actually be 4th in the pecking order on this. I don't think we'll get to that point. I think we'll still be pretty confident in the sense that, like, the rankings are what they are. And
I don't mean, to be clear, I don't mean reevaluating who these guys are as players, but just in terms of who played best over the course of the series.
See, the tough part about evaluating all of this, it's been the number one question we've had this week, John. What are you getting out of Julius Randle? It's the simple, obvious, big question.
it's more than that. I think for me personally, it is the entire series is built around what are you getting out of Julius Randle, and it's probably going to decide the series. That being said, this Knicks team, and this is something I think is very different from Cleveland, and this is where the teams are not in the same camp. This, I mean, barring something crazy, I would think you guys are going to go into next season with the same, at the very least, the same top 4 as you have now. The Knicks are going to face a summer in which I have a funny feeling there's going to be opportunities to perhaps make the big addition that they did not make last year because
reasons.
Reasons.
And
And
they're sitting on a stockpile of picks with a lot of depth. This is when you consolidate. Yeah.
And like, if we're talking about, if Emmanuel Quickley comes out of the series, is like, oh my God, Emmanuel Quickley was the best player on the floor 2 games in that 6-game Knicks win. How does that impact things? Like if Julius reverts back to what he was against Atlanta 2 years ago, and it is very obviously not based on a health thing, although I don't even know how we would make that distinction. Like, that opens another door. So like, I think they're like RJ got, I mean, man, the things that are at stake for that player in this series, like, there's so much of that stuff, I think, at stake. So that is why I do think it is a very, very, I don't want to say pivotal series, but it's going to be an interesting one for sure.
Yeah, and John, you're being dishonest. You know how people are going to make the distinction on whether Julius's play is due to health or performance, and that's going to be confirmation bias.
Yeah,
it's whatever their opinion was going in. That is how basketball discourse goes. But you know what? We've taken up enough of your time, guys. Let's get to predictions before we wrap this thing up. Andrew, let's go right to left here. I'll start with you. What's your prediction for this series? As
of right now, without knowing the status of Julius Randle or the health, or just really what we're going to get from him this series, I've been at Cavs in 6. If Randle plays I probably will switch to Knicks in 7. The idea of the Knicks winning a road game 7 is as good of a road team as they've been. And if Julius is getting healthier and healthier as the season goes along, as the series goes along, and then you add in like the physicality that he can bring to a series, which I think will be a Knicks strength. I think they can win the series. If they can't, and we're in game 3 and he's playing 12 minutes and clearly can't give it a go, then yeah, I think the Cavs will out-talent the Knicks. But it's a cop-out to give you 2 predictions, but I'll say Cavs in 6 for now, and then with the caveat that if Randle plays, I'll go Knicks in 7.
All right, John, I don't know how many predictions you want to give, but go ahead.
Give all of them, John. Yes.
I think it's going at least 6. I would probably bet on it going 7 more than I would bet on it going 6. And man, you guys are so freaking good. You're just a really good team. But I also do think that there is something special about this Knicks team, and in particular, something very special about Jalen Brunson. So I'll go Knicks in 7.
Cool. Carter?
I'm going Cavs in 5. That's been my take since the series started. Again, that doesn't reflect, that's a plurality opinion. I don't think it's I don't think if the series is played 100 times, the Cavs win in 80 of them. I don't think that. I think each outcome has like a 20% chance of happening. To my point about high variance, but I just keep going back to the fact that I think the Cavs have 4 of the best 6 players in this series, and I think they have 2 of the best 3.
Okay.
If I think that, how can I not?
I get it.
Sure.
How can I not pick Cavs? And how can I not pick them in a relatively short series? But again, I just know that there's so much variance at stake here, and I know that there are so many players who are about to, go into true battle for the first time. You don't really know who players are until their first and second things they like to do are taken away. And so, again, I think a Knicks victory is not unfeasible. I just think that, especially if Randle takes a minute to get his feet under him, the Cavs have they should out-talent them. And if the Knicks were more experienced than they are, I think I would feel a little bit more confident in the Knicks, pushing this and, potentially taking this series. But if I don't think they're more talented, and I don't think they're more healthy, and I don't think they're more experienced, what am I doing here? I'm going Cavs in 5.
Alrighty.
And I might be wrong. Might be loud wrong. We'll find out.
Yeah.
You will hear from it. Yes, you will find out.
You will hear. You will hear. We know where that's going to end up on the chart. I'm going to go Cavs in 6. And part of that reason is yes, the Knicks don't have tons more playoff experience, but I do think Cavs starting lineup, average age of 23. I just feel like there's going to be times where they get rushed. And I can see Evan Mobley in particular. We've seen him have first halves where he's playing maybe 25% too quick and, leaving the little hook shots are going long. Darius Garland, how he's going to react to this moment and all that. I feel confident in the Cavs, but I feel like there's going to be a game where that the Knicks win, and there's going to be a game where the Cavs beat themselves. And maybe some of that is just as a result of seeing what we've seen throughout the season in clutch time, where they have had some of these hiccups where out of an abundance of caution to, value every possession in an important game, Mitchell or Garland run the clock down to 6 seconds before they start initiating the offense and make New York's life much, much easier on the defensive end, right? I'm curious to see how that goes. But I think, I forget what the stat was exactly. I think it is that the number 4 seed beats the number 5 seed 52% of the time. And this feels like the most 4-5 matchup ever. These teams are both so good. I think they're better than a normal 4-5 matchup.
They are.
This is going to be the matchup of the first round. And honestly, I am a little disappointed that there is the Randle injury, because like you said, John, the Cavs blueprint, as much as some people are going to make a big deal out of this and, if they lose, you got to fire everyone and trade everyone. That's not the way that this is going to play out, right? Like there is more of a foundation. We know what this team's going to be moving forward. And for that reason, I want to see them tested. I want to see them problem solve. I want to see the adjustments, right? There's not the blueprint isn't on the line in any way, shape, or form. But I do feel confident with the Cavs in this series. And the Randle injury obviously impacts that. He's an all-NBA talent.
Justin, can I quickly press on you here?
Yeah.
I'm really surprised you have the Cavs closing out a series on the road, given that this team's clutch problems on the road this year.
Because I think they're better than the road. I think they're better than their record on the road. I think they're third in road net rating. I think they're better on the road than the record indicates.
Yeah, that's why. Real quick, Carter. This is why I was like Cavs in 6 if I was going to pick the Cavs anything, because the Knicks' resiliency on the road has been a thing, and oh boy, have there been some clunkers.
They're
MSG.
Mediocre at home. Like that's the weird thing.
The best part about this season is like there's been so many like, dang, they could have had that one at MSG this season. And how many times, John, have we been sitting here and it's like, oh, what this record would have been if this bounce or this rebound or this free throw. And you know, a lot of those moments have happened at home. I'm just also gonna now, in solidarity with John, jumping all the way and just fully make my pick Knicks in 7, because I cannot have
now if you got 3 picks, I'm giving a second. I'll say
there you go.
If the Cavs win game 1 and 2, I said this on the previous podcast, but game 2 is the game that I'm most confident in. Game 1, just because of the layoff and just because of the inexperience on the Cavs side, I think that's a toss-up. Cavs win game 1 and 2. Cavs in 5, baby.
Cavs in 5. Okay.
You woed me. You went whoa, like I'm making some big bold statement, and then you pivot at the 11th hour.
Hey, that's my second pick, though. I mean, going Cavs in 5 on your first pick, Carter, that carries a little bit of gravitas.
Why you got to mix in 2 picks on your first pick, guys? That's why. That's how you got to do it.
This is slop. This is slop out of my two peers on the outside of this conversation, and I don't respect it.
I'm not making a second pick. I
you dare.
One last thing, but no, I will not do that. I will say one last thing. Someone just now said that they're. I think maybe Justin, you said you're confident. I'm not confident in saying the Knicks are going to win the series. The only thing that does give me a little bit of confidence, though, a little bit, is I know that in Josh Hart, in Emmanuel Quickley, and again, I'll go back to in Jalen Brunson, the Knicks are going to have 3 players who are, without question, not afraid of the moment. And I don't think Julius Randle, if he's in there, is going to be afraid of the moment either. Not to say he's going to execute in the big moment. That's 2 different things. But that gives me confidence a little bit. That's the last thing I'll say.
Every single time we've been waiting for the shoe to drop. I said it earlier. Every single time it's like, here comes this Orlando moment where Julius and Quickley got into it. We were wondering if we should start planning play-in coverage.
Yeah,
and
we were.
They didn't lose for the next 5 games and like walked into the 5 seed. So this it's unquantifiable. You can't really find it on dunks and threes, but this team's special in a way. They've overachieved and surprised us all season, and so we're done doubting them in that sense. You know.
Well, on that note, I'm going to wrap this thing up before anyone else gives another prediction. We just can't risk it. I do think that these are two special teams. I think these are teams that are set up well for future success. I think this is set up well for a future rivalry. And I think if there are future editions of this playoff series, I think it's going to happen later than the first round, and I feel pretty confident saying that. So I'm looking forward to you guys being that thorn on our side, and hopefully we can have more of these podcasts, and hopefully round 1 of it leads to a little bit of bragging from Carter and myself. That's what I'm really hoping for here. Okay, Cavs in 5, baby. Let's just do it. Let's just rip out the Band-Aid. 3 predictions, Carter. 2 of them are the same. Don't you dare shake your head. Big thanks to everyone. Big thanks to everyone tuning in live on YouTube. We really do appreciate you guys. Make sure you like and subscribe. Click the notification bell so you know when we're going live. If you're listening via podcast and you want to support us, leave us a rating, leave a review, subscribe, unsubscribe, resubscribe, and help cook those books. If you want to be part of Chasedown's exclusive Discord chat, send a screenshot of that review to chasedownpod@gmail.com. However you choose to support us, we really do appreciate it. Make sure you guys are staying safe out there. Until next time, go Cavs.